Today we're going to talk about area of composite figures. These are figures that are made up of more than one type of shape. So they may have 2 or 3 different shapes in them, and you have to determine the area of all of it. So area measures the quantity inside the figure. So let's take a look at our first composite figure. So let's take a look at example A. Example A says, what is the area of this room? So taking a look at a room, it's obviously not going to be perfect squares. Most rooms are not. This is made up of what looks like to be more than one figure. So I can draw a line to separate this figure in several different ways. The reason I would do this is because I have a formula sheet that only has regular figures, so there's no area of irregular figures. I need to break it into figures that are regular so I can use my formula to figure it out. So I can draw a line from here to here and break my shape that way. That's not how I'm going to break it this time, but that will work. You can break your figure however you would like. That's one way you could break it. The way that I'm going to break it is I'm going to draw a line here, and I'm going to separate my shape into 2 different rectangles. So in order to figure out the area, I'm going to figure out the area of one rectangle, then figure out the other area of the other rectangle, and add them together. Now this problem has another question to it, which says the carpet costs $9.45 per square foot. How much will it cost to put carpet in this room? So once we're done finding the area of this room, we have to complete the second part of the problem, which tells us to figure out how much the cost of the carpet will be. So let's start with our first rectangle. So I'm going to write my rectangle area formula, which is area equals length times width. Now again, I have 2 rectangles here, so I'm going to need area equals length times width twice. So my first rectangle, I'm going to plug in my numbers 22 and 17, because 22 is the length and 17 is the width. So this is my first rectangle, so I'm going to plug them in. All I have to do is multiply. 22 times 17 gives me 374. Perfect. I've got my first rectangle's area, and I'm well on my way. The second rectangle, I know that I have 12 feet as the length, but I don't know what my width is. But just like what I was talking about with perimeter of irregular figures, I can use the problem to help me out here. So if I see that the entire length is 28 feet, and this top section is 22 feet, I can do some math to figure out what the part is that's left over. So to figure out the part that's left over, I'm going to take the 28 feet minus the 22 feet, and that's going to give me 6 feet. So I know the part that's left over is 6 feet. And that's the same on both the top or the bottom, but it doesn't matter because for my formula, I'm just going to plug in 12 times 6. I can multiply those 2 together, and when I do that, I get 72. So now I have the 2 areas of the 2 different shapes. I'm going to add them together to give me the total length, or the total area. When I add them together, I get 446 feet squared. Remember to use your label of units. We're talking about area, so area is squared, and in this case we're talking about feet, so it's feet squared. But that doesn't finish answering my questions, because the second part of the question says the carpet costs $9.45 per square foot. How much will it cost to put carpet in this room? So I'm going to take my $9.45, which is for 1 foot. I'm going to multiply it by the number of feet I have, which is 446, so they can tell me all the feet. And when I do that, 446 times $9.45 gives me a total of $4,214.70. It's important to make sure that you use the dollar sign because you want to have a word answer for your word problem. So my answer is $4,214.70. That answers both questions on this problem. Let's take a look at the next one. Example B says this patio is composed of an isosceles trapezoid and a semicircle. So that gives us some information in our problem right away that we can use to help figure it out. So we need to figure out the area of the semicircle and the area of our trapezoid. So we're going to need 2 formulas. We're going to need our trapezoid formula, A equals 1/2 height times base 1 plus base 2. And we need the area of a semicircle. But if I'm looking at my formula sheet, I don't have an area formula for a semicircle. I have an area formula for a circle, pi r squared, but I don't have one for a semicircle, or half of a circle. So I'm going to have to adjust my formula so that I can use it for a semicircle. So to adjust my formula, I'm going to take my a equals pi r squared, just like I would for a regular circle, but since I'm talking about half of a circle, I'm going to divide it by 2. So my formula that I'm going to use for my semicircle is a equals pi r squared divided by 2. Now this formula is not on your formula sheet. Might be a good idea to write this formula on your formula sheet so you can use it on the test and on the quizzes. If it's not on your formula sheet, you can't use it on the test and quizzes. So it might be a good idea to copy this formula onto your formula sheet now. So let's start with the semicircle. So for my semicircle, I need pi, which is going to be 3.14. I need the radius, and I need to square that and divide by 2. So right now, looking at my object there, I don't have a radius. Nowhere does it tell me how much the half the circle is. It doesn't really give me a whole lot of measurements there at all. If I look, the key measurement here is the 10 meters. The 10 meters that I'm looking here is telling me that this point here to the end of the circle is 10. And I know if the circle is already in half, a point going from the middle to the end is going to be the radius. So I know the radius is 10. And I can use that in my area formula for the semicircle. So I'm going to plug things in. I'm going to plug in a equals 3.14 for pi, and I'm going to plug in 10 for my radius squared. Then I'm going to follow the order of operations. I'm going to square first, so 10 squared is 100. 3.14 divided by 2. Then again, follow the order of operations. I'm going to do everything on the top first, then divide by 2. So 3.14 times 100 is 314, divided by 2, and a equals 157. So that gives me the area of the semicircle, but it still leaves me with the problem of figuring out what the area of the trapezoid is. So for my trapezoid, I need the height, base 1, and base 2. Well, I can see over here the height is going to be 12. I can see that one of the bases is going to be 30. Now I'm missing this other base up here across the top where their dotted line is. But I remember that if, 10 was halfway across the circle, and that was my radius, and this time I'm going all the way across the circle, so I need the diameter. So if the diameter is always double what the radius is, I know this will be 20. So my diameter is 20, or my base is 20. So now that I've got all the pieces for my formula that I need, I'm going to plug them in. So I've got a equals 1/2, my height is 12, my first base is 20, my second base is 30. And I'm going to follow the order of operations. I'm going to add the 20 and 30 together. And then a equals 1/2 times 12 times 50. And when I multiply those all together, I get a equals 300. So I've got my two areas. Now I'm going to add them together so I can figure out what the total area is. So 157 plus 300. And when I do that, I get my area equals 457 meters squared. But that's not the end of the problem. The problem says that stone pavers are sold in boxes that cover 25 square meters. How many boxes are needed to cover the patio? So I'm going to take my 457 meters. I'm going to divide by 25 because that's how many come in each box. When I do that, I end up with 18.28. But I can't buy 18.28 boxes of something, so I have to buy enough to cover all of it. If I buy 18 boxes, it won't be enough because 0.28 will still be out there. So I have to buy one extra box and have some left over, so I need to buy 19 boxes. Great, let's take a look at the last one. So the last one here says, what is the area of this figure? And I have two things that I can clearly see. I can see a triangle and a rectangle. So I'm going to divide them by the triangle and the rectangle and find those two shapes. So I'm going to start with the rectangle. I'm going to look at my area formula for rectangle. I know that's a equals 1/2 base times height. So then I'm going to plug in the things that I need. So let's see if I know what my base is and I know what my height is. So I can see that the 3 there is going to be the height of my triangle because it's going from the bottom up to the top. So I know my height is going to be 3. Now to figure out my base is a little bit trickier. I can see that there's a rectangle, so this side is going to be the same as the far side. So if this is 2, this is 2. But my triangle is longer than that. So I need to make sure that I'm including the two sides that are sticking out. So 2 plus 1 is 3, 3 plus 1 is 4. So my base is 4 and my height is 3. So let's go ahead and plug those things in. Copy down my formula again. plug in my 4, plug in my 3. I'm going to multiply everything together, and I end up with A equals 6 inches squared. But that's not the only thing I need to do. I need to take a look at my rectangle, so I need the length and the width. So as we just talked about, the width is going to be 2, and my length is up here is 5. So I've got my length and my width. So I'm going to write down my formula, area equals length times width, plug in 5 and 2, and when I multiply those together, I get 10. So I just need to add my two together. So 10 plus 6 is 16 inches. This brings us to the end of this video. So if you like this video, go ahead and throw us a thumbs up. If you love this video, go ahead and throw us a sub, and we will catch you in the next one.